Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm back. Alright, so Sean here from How to Be a Sound Engineer. That's the name of this channel. I have a few other channels, but it's been a while since I've uploaded anything to this channel. So I thought I'd do something for you guys, because I know I've been getting quite a few subscribers and a few comments, and really haven't been promoting this channel. So I figured I'd go ahead and give some of my subscribers something new to watch. So what I'm going to do this time is I am going to do a segment on compression. The last few times I did segments on basic video editing, like just the basics, how to not video editing, audio editing, basics on how to record and how to do just real simple tasks, as well as basic editing techniques, as well as setup and stuff like that. So like slip editing and snap to grid and just some of the basics of Sonar. So this time I'm going to go over something a little more specific. I thought I'd go over compression, since compression is one of the most basic tools used in audio production. It's also probably the least understood, especially for the beginner. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Alright, so right here I have a new project. It's actually a project, or a song I just recorded. It's all freestyled, so it's not the most lyrically greatest song in the world, but it was fun. I never attempted to record a song without writing something down before, so I thought I'd give it a try. So this is what I came up with. Anyway, so I took an instrumental, chopped it up to my liking, this and that, and played around with it. I didn't really necessarily plan on using this for anything serious, so we'll see where it goes. But anyway, so I recorded some stuff. Right here is our basic track view. Obviously, this is the Pro Channel display on the left here. Here's all of our plugins. I have all the wave plugins, as well as a lot of other ones as well. So a lot of plugin choices. Here's the console view, basically the mixer. And so, also another thing I thought I'd mention here is, you may have noticed that these little snowflakes are blue. Well, that is because they're frozen. And when I say frozen, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. What's happening here is I am taking those tracks right here, and all the plugins. If you click here, click here. I go up to the tracks here. You can see that there's a whole bunch of plugins here inside each one of these channels. And what I did is, to save CPU power, is I froze those channels. So basically it just pre-renders down the tracks. That's why they're a different color here. It pre-renders them down so that I save RAM and CPU power and whatnot. Allows me to edit without my computer stuttering a lot, which is a good tool, especially if you have a lot of crazy things going on. So keep that in mind as you get more and more complex projects. You can always freeze your tracks in this program and save yourself some CPU. You can also, as they get more complicated, if you have really complicated stuff, you can archive tracks. Basically, it kind of like mutes them and takes off all the, it like pre-renders them down, but then kind of pulls them out of the project. I guess the best way, it archives them literally. So you can't hear them when you archive them, but they're still there. So that's the difference between freezing and archiving, really. And archiving is only used if you're really have super complex projects with tons and tons of tracks, and maybe it's really long, and you need to work on sections at a time. So anyway, back to compression. Over here, I'm going to go ahead and use my mastering ozone suite here to demonstrate it. Without going, but this actually here, I'm under the multiband dynamics. Dynamics is another term used for compression, basically in the sound world. Dynamics refers to the dynamic range of sound. This is a multi-band dynamic unit here. So what that means is multi-band is, instead of affecting the entire spectrum of sound with whatever settings that you set, you can set different settings for different frequency ranges. So your lows, your bass sounds and stuff, you can affect differently than your highs or mid-tones, and really tune in your dynamic, your compression ratios. Oftentimes this is done more to final mixes, but it can be applied. Multi-band compressors can be applied to anything. Generally with vocals, if you're compressing individual tracks that you're recording, it's overkill to use multi-band compression most of the time, unless it's a really like dynamically diverse instrument of some sort, then there's a lot going on. You generally don't need to use multi-band on individual tracks. That's why it's used generally on bus tracks or mastering tracks, the final outputs, because this is where you're honing all the frequencies together in trying to create that even sound. So right now I'm going to kind of talk about this as, just imagine it as a regular old compressor. We're just going to use this mid-range here for our purposes. What I'm going to go over real quick is kind of what's going on here, what you're looking at. Up here is just the frequency ranges, and I can move them, and you can see the ranges change here. You can see exactly what frequency range you're at each point along that thing, and you can move it. But we're not working with multi-band right now, so we're just going to pretend this is all the frequencies here, okay? Anyway, so this right here on this particular thing is the mix. So generally in this situation the entire mix is going to be run through the compression. Basically you can just decipher how much of your sound is going to come through the compressor and how much is going to bypass it with this right here. This is your gain, so you should know what gain is. Basically a volume control, in real layman's terms, for each individual according to these, specifically into the frequency ranges. But this would be your band gain or your gain. This is your threshold limit, so this is deciding where it would actually cut off. This is like a limiter built into this compressor. A lot of compressors don't have this per se. This is like an add-on feature you'll find on some higher end compressors. What it does, as you can see up here, if I move this down, you can see this line right here is basically the velocity at which the sound is traveling, right? As it gains more decibels, loudness, as these marks here show, is as it gets louder, it goes farther towards zero, okay? Like any soundboard would. So as the sound is moving up, this is the velocity of which the sound is traveling. Once it reaches this point, it starts getting compressed. So as you can see, the velocity, this line here starts bending down just a little bit. Maybe if I click on a different one, here's a better example, a little more clear. Let's see what this one looks like. Okay, so as you can see here, it comes up and basically slows it down. Instead of it continuing at the same pace towards this point here, what we're doing is we're slowing it down. Basically, as it gets to roughly about negative 16 decibels. Sorry about that. People are blowing me up. As it gets closer to about 16 decibels, it starts slowing down. Compression comes down. Now we can change that as we move. This is the threshold of compression right here. You can see that diode is moving with whatever decibel range we select. Okay. You can also see the exact points right here along this somewhere. And all compressors and all this stuff is going to work roughly the same way. If you understand one, you can kind of figure out what the other ones are doing just by kind of paying attention and looking. So be observant and look what's going on. So threshold compression here, like I said, is this point here, which at which point it kicks in. It's basically a threshold. The ratio is at which pace it's going to compress that audio. Sorry, one sec. Turn that down. Okay. So it basically is how much compression we're going to apply to it. If you turn it all the way here, it's basically, it's not quite a limiter. It's not completely like stopping it, but it's pretty damn close to a limiter. So, and also you can, no, this one. Some of them you can actually, there's like multipliers and stuff, just as kind of like, I think it's a little more control, but you don't really need that stuff. Anyway, this is the compression ratio, which basically talks about how much compression it is. Down here, this part is what we like to call an exciter, or it can be used as an exciter, or it can be used as a attack, or attack, basically. How fast that's going to, like, it's kind of like the bottom end compression, I guess would be the easiest way to explain it. As compression being up here, as it gets louder, it's going to compress some of that higher dynamic range down and keep it from clipping, keep it from just being too loud in certain spots, is the idea. This is kind of like the opposite, but the same thing for the bottom end of that. So it's going to bring some of the bottom end out more, some of the quiet parts out more than it, if you turn this up, the quieter parts are going to get louder, so to speak. And then also you have your ratio here, which you can actually kind of go in reverse and really speed it up. So you can get kind of real technical, and you can play around with this for a long time. But this is basically how the compression works. If I play this real quick, you can kind of see. As you can see here, the compression is flying up and slowing down to this point. And you can see this is different for each bandwidth. So basically, as we're getting into the multi-band part of it, excuse me, there we go. As we're getting into the multi-band part of it, we can actually start adjusting each frequency range to differ for, the compression ratio at each range. We can add, change the bottom end, and really like shape our sound. So with tools like equalizers and compression of regular compression and multi-band compression, we can really shape our sounds without getting into too complex of things that will really without going into pitch shifting and reverb and all the other effects that are out there that are great tools as well. But these are some of the basic ones. Like compression, you really need to understand and really listen to, and play with it and see what is going on, and understand what's going on before you just skip over it and not know what's going on. Before you learn any other effect or plugin, you should have a strong understanding of what compression is doing. It's one of those kind of things that it's real hard to explain. I mean, I can tell you what's going on with each section here and what all these mean, and I gave you more or less a rundown of what's going on. You should basically understand what decibels are and what your input and output is. As the input comes into the plug-in, this is where you want to set your input, and output be this. You want to watch your clipping and whatnot, but you want to play around with your compression and really have a good understanding for what it's doing to your sound. It helps avoid clipping and generally bad sound. A properly applied compression can really make all the difference in a production, especially if you do nothing else. If you do nothing else to it, at least have properly applied compression, and maybe a little EQ, just to kind of shape your sound just right. If you do those two things real well, if you learn how to do those well, that's going to make your sound that much better and well worth the time and effort you put into it. So go out there, play around with your compression. There's lots of different types of compressors. I can load up a few more here. Oops, I have a lot of plugins, so it always warns me and tells me I have too many plugins. But like, we'll go to just this Cakewalk one. Oops, not that one. This one's basically the same thing. I like graphical ones, not these knob ones. I mean, they function the same way, but because I am visual, I kind of like to see what's going on. So here's one of my favorite compressors. I believe this comes with Cakewalk, and it functions exactly the same way. As you can see, this line is right here. A lot of times what you can do is just go into your presets, they'll be there, and then start tweaking from there. Play around and see what they're doing. You know, they may have different names for a few things. This knee is going to talk about how fast it is, this curve. In the other plugin, it's much more harsh. It can be. And this can be too. You can have a hard knee just like the other one. But you can apply it softer as well, and you have your ratio just like the other one, and your threshold point, which is also controlled here. So, and then you can change your attack and release down here, just like everything else. And you have an output gain, just like all of them do. So go ahead and play around with compression. Get yourselves a couple different compressors and whatever DAW you're using, whether it be Sonar or Pro Tools or Acid or Cubase or any of those. There's a ton of different DAWs out there. But get your hands on, open up the compressor, really pay attention to what the sound is doing as you start making tweaks and small tweaks. Listen to it at high volumes and low volumes. That way you can really understand what is going on, and do it with basic sounds. Don't do it just throw a whole mix up there and then do it to something where you can't really tell what's going on. Do it to an individual sound. Do it to just a vocal track, just a plain old solo yourself a vocal track and listen to what's going on as you're compressing it, and pay attention. Take notes in your head, write them down, whatever. But the key is to really just play around and understand what it's doing. So, in general terms, compression is to bring those highs down, the lows up, and give it a more even sound. The more you compress it, the more so. Obviously, too much compression is a bad thing, but modern music uses a lot of compression. If you look at a final waveform of modern pop music, it's just pretty much a block. And then you listen to, like symphony music or something of that nature, you're going to see a lot more movement in the waveform, and thus they're not having nearly as much compression, especially as an overall track. But anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Go ahead and have fun with it, and hopefully I didn't bore you too much with me rambling, but I just wanted to really try to explain it the best I could. And have fun with it. And hit the subscribe button, and I'll try to do some more videos. Keep sending me messages for topics you want me to talk about. Maybe I'll do a section on EQ and something else next time. I don't know yet. But send me some messages, share my videos, thumb them up, and subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Peace.